What is going on, folks? Welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast, your daily podcast covering the Pittsburgh Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And folks, as always, I am Nick Farabaugh, your host. I work at Pittsburgh Sports Now, call games at WPTS Radio, and I'm a production assistant at ACC Network. And folks, today it's going to be a Kenny Pickett day. We'll talk about Kenny Pickett's press conference today at the NFL Combine, some things that he's doing with the hand size. Obviously, the hand size controversy is still there with Kenny Pickett and probably will be until he disproves those on the football field in the NFL season. And we will talk about that. We will also showcase Kenny's interview from the Combine today. All of it's coming up today on Locked On Pitt.
You are Locked On Pitt, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, folks? Welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast, your daily podcast covering the Pittsburgh Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And folks, as always, thank you for listening to the Locked On Pitt podcast and making it your first listen every day, folks. Always appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe to all of those great things. And if you are listening to this, make sure to leave a 5-star review and give feedback and not make this show as good as it possibly can be without your guidance. Now, today, I want to talk about Kenny Pickett because obviously he will make the rounds. The Combine is here, and Kenny Pickett spoke today with the quarterbacks, and obviously the biggest topic was, one, hand size, and two, the teams he met with, including the Panthers and the Steelers and all these other teams that he has met with. Kenny Pickett is a well-regarded man in the NFL and certainly has his suitors, and I think the Panthers are going to be one of those. The Broncos are going to be one of those. I think the Steelers are interested as well, but I'm starting to believe more and more that goes down, less likely that guy gets to 20. And so Pitt now has a quarterback that can go as high as 6th overall, to be quite honest with you, which is something I did not expect to be saying about Kenny Pickett heading into the season. There were things that Kenny could do to help his stock, but he has helped it tremendously in a way that I did not see coming on this type of scale. But his hand size is going to be the biggest deterrent for teams. And there are teams that are going to have strict measurement thresholds that he's not going to meet potentially. And that's the thing that is going to be the topic of discussion. George Patone, the Broncos general manager, talked about certain thresholds that the Broncos have and that he has personally for hand size and all of that, and that you have to meet. And so some teams will quite literally probably cross off Kenny Pickett if he doesn't measure above, say, 8.5 inches, if that's their cutoff, or whether that's 9 inches. If he measures it at 8 1/4, which is the reported number that is going around, which has been floated around in most circles, it's going to be a historical low. And so there's going to be things that are unprecedented with Kenny Pickett in terms of that hand size. People are not going to know what to do necessarily, how to react to that. And so Kenny is obviously working on these hand size exercises that are going to try and help him stretch and work his fingers out as far as he can to try and get better grip strength and try to essentially make his hand not wider but longer. And so that's something that with Kenny Pickett, can that help him? Obviously, the glove is going to help him regardless. That's going to help him get that grip. But if he can maybe lengthen that hand a little bit, help the measurement out just a little bit and stretch out his hand, that's somewhere where we can talk about maybe Kenny Pickett coming in a little bit higher than that reported number at 8 1/4. You know, that's something that Kenny Pickett, I think, is going to want to avoid, because that is territory where we have not even seen. I think the only quarterback on record right now that actually has that that measurement is Kevin Davidson, who was a former quarterback at Princeton. They came out about 2 or 3 years ago. No one else has been measured with those small of hands. And so this is really an outlier in terms of measured data. Kenny Pickett's a historical outlier in that regard. Now, guys like Joe Burrow have 9-inch hands. There are plenty of quarterbacks that are hovering around that 9-inch area. And so maybe that's where Kenny comes in which case I don't think you're going to hear about this a lot more. Because if he has 9-inch hands and he measures there, that's at least par for the course. And again, you have a clear-cut example of a player that is quite honestly similar in a lot of ways to him in Joe Burrow that is completely fine. And so those hand size questions will deter some teams away. Some teams won't be able to stomach those hand size questions. They have their strict thresholds, and they'll stick to those thresholds, and they live and die by those thresholds, and more power to them. But also, it's not the only thing. And there's a lot to work through with the hand size argument and the grip on the ball. And obviously, the issue that he had down in the rainy day in Mobile, it wasn't something that he did that changed everyone's thoughts all of a sudden. And raining games he had in Pittsburgh, yes, he had good games in the rain. He also had a pretty rough second half against North Carolina in the rain, and that didn't help. The fumble stats are not ideal either. He has a lot of fumbles, and maybe that's where the bigger concern is going to be. I'm not sure if it's going to be about gripping the ball and getting it to an accurate place. I think we know Kenny Pickett can do that regardless of his hand size, but the fumbles are going to be an issue, and 28 fumbles in his 4 years of starting, it's a lot of fumbles. It's a high fumble rate. And so limiting as many fumbles as possible is going to be big for Kenny Pickett. Maybe having that better grip, getting that better grip strength can help assuage those concerns. That's what Kenny Pickett's going to have to do. Teams are going to have differing opinions. Teams are going to go through their protocols with Kenny Pickett, but he certainly has a bunch of other traits: the athleticism, the off-platform throws, the accuracy, the intelligence, the toughness, the intangibles that he brings to the table are obviously going to jump off the page at you if you are a team. All right, folks, well, I want to take you to Kenny Pickett's interview, but first, let me let you know about Run Your Pool, because March Madness is only a few weeks away, and that means you need to start thinking now about where you're going to be running your brackets this year. Are you going for the usual, or are you looking for the best? We've done our homework here, and we're running brackets with runyourpool.com. Along with standard brackets, Run Your Pool offers game types like Survivor or Pick X. They have options to edit scoring, and they offer more intel to make your picks, all the stuff you won't find at ESPN or CBS. If you've got a business, Run Your Pool can help you take some of that madness magic and play alongside your employees or even gain customers. Plus, they offer full white glove customer support, custom branding, and one of the easiest 3-man setups you'll ever find. Clearly, we believe in Run Your Pool because, like I said, we're running our brackets there ourselves. There's no truer test than that. If you want to play against us for a shot at cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/lockedon. And while you're there, create your own pool for your friends and family. Enter Pure Madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details will be available there. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize. We look forward to seeing and beating you there. Folks, the football season might be over, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, as well as other pertinent information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Sorry I'm late, guys. Got held up with the medical stuff.
Hey, Pete, just tell us a little bit, you playing at Pitt and having that relationship with the Steelers helped your process, with being there and not only that as far as the NFL is concerned.
Yeah, I just think being able to watch them practice, during the spring and sometimes in the summer, early summer, I think as a young kid coming into college, it just kind of showed me how to be a professional, showed me how to practice the right way. It's something that I always tell the young guys coming in to take advantage of and really see how it is to be a pro and how to attack everyday practice.
Speaking of being a pro, we got guys like Dane Jackson and Jamar Hamlin who plays with the Bills. Have they spoken with you in reference to that process?
I have. I've spoken to a lot of my former teammates. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this whole thing. I think the big tip has just really been to enjoy it and take it a day at a time with this whole process.
Kenny, how extensively did you talk with the Steelers, and what would it be like to replace a Hall of Fame quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger if they were to take you?
Right. I mean, obviously Ben's a Hall of Famer, like you said, and I've had multiple talks with them, and it would be unbelievable, like I said before, to play in the city that I played college football in. I think it'd really be really special.
Any pressure at all? Did you feel that pressure?
I mean, you're going into the NFL, of course. Pressure's obviously it's a natural thing, but whatever team I go to, I'll just be myself and be the best player I can be.
Kenny, from the Heisman ceremony to now, what does this process feel like for you, the NFL draft process?
Busy, busy. There's a new thing every day, but I enjoy the process of training and putting the work in, and really just getting better at my craft. So I've had a lot of fun doing that.
What are you looking to prove this week here?
Just continue to be consistent. I feel like I was that way at the Senior Bowl. Want to come into the combine and be the same.
Do you think you should be the #1 quarterback taken in this draft, and why? And what happened those last couple years at Pitt where you really took off?
Right, I do. And I think knowing how to win is key, and that's the #1 thing at this position. What caused that rise? You're saying? I think just all the hard work over the years kind of culminated in that last season. It wasn't just an overnight thing. I didn't just wake up and all that fell into my lap. So it was years and years of hard work with my teammates, my coaches, and we really went out there and had the season we all expected to have.
Did you have a relationship with Peyton Manning for this camp? I thought I heard one of the broadcasts. And what is that relationship like?
Yeah, the decision to come back to Pitt, after the 2020 year, Peyton gave me a lot of insight that helped me make that decision. And the best decision for me was to go back to school, and obviously in a much better situation now this year than I was last year if I was decided to come out. So really grateful for all the advice that he gave me.
Kenny, what do you feel you'll do well immediately for an NFL team?
Do well immediately?
Yeah.
Coming from a pro system, I feel like I'll be able to adapt well into whatever system. Hopefully, a West Coast system is what I came from with Coach Whipple. So I think being able to come in and learn an offense quickly and be able to adjust that way, I think that's #1.
There's a lot of questions and concerns with your hand size. Do you read much into that?
No, I mean, it is what it is. I think the media runs with it a little more than I'd say NFL teams do. There really wasn't much talk about that in all the formal interviews and the informal interviews that I've had so far this week. So it is what it is.
Justin Crump talked this morning about training with you and how you guys push each other. What have been your impressions of him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a really consistent player, and like you said, I think we never verbally talk about competing and everything, but every single day, I mean, he's like my training partner. It feels like I've been like at college almost with him. How much time we spent together and on the practice field throwing, in the weight room, doing all the testing drills together. So it's been awesome to work with Dustin. Just kind of another relationship in this process that'll last a lifetime. I feel like we'll keep in touch throughout our careers.
Kenny, you really exploded statistically this year in a lot of different categories. What do you attribute that to? And have teams talked to you at all about 1 year being that big benchmark year as opposed to maybe throughout the course of your career? Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like I mentioned before, it was all the hard work kind of growing into that last season. Having my third season with Coach Whipple, mastering the offense, taking more ownership of our team, of our offense, being more of a vocal leader in terms of throwing sessions and film sessions and teaching our offense to our guys, and they're hearing it from my voice instead of a coach. So we're all on the same page when we went out there every Saturday. So I think a lot went into it. Definitely was not just a me thing. Great teammates, great coaches. Love the guys that I played with, so I think all that came together for a special season for us.
Kenny, Panther, you can choose where you go, obviously, but do you look at teams where you think you could be a good fit? Is that part of the process for you too?
I think you can get caught up in that. I think there's obviously 32 places I could go. I'm not sure where I'll go. Right now, I'm just focused on improving and getting ready for whatever NFL team that I could potentially go to. Once I find that out in April, then it'll be obviously a lot easier to know the system and learn that way.
Kenny, Panthers coach Matt Rule was not at the Senior Bowl. What's it been like reconnecting with him here at the Combine now?
Yeah, it was cool seeing him. I haven't seen him in a long time. Obviously smiles when we first saw each other walk into the room. So, kind of picked up right where we left off, I'd say, back in 2016 when he was at Temple and I was originally committed there. So, great guy. It was awesome to reconnect.
And then how are your conversations at the Senior Bowl differing from now here at the Combine? Like, what's different about those interviews?
I'd say Senior Bowl is more getting to know you as a person, a little bit on the player side, the X's and O's, a lot more X's and O's and film work here with the interviews. I'm sure it'll just continue down the road to get increase with player IQ and stuff like that with the visits.
Thank you.
Peyton still lives in Denver. He's still associated with the Broncos in many ways. Have you thought about playing for the Broncos? And have you talked with Coach Hackett and G and George Payton?
Yep, had an interview with them that went really well. Really haven't spoken to Peyton about it. I think it'd be a great fit, and would be really excited to play there as well.
Kenny, what excites you about the NFL game?
The NFL game, it's been a dream of mine since I can remember. Going back to when I first picked up a football, my first memories of football, watching Sundays with my family, having friends come over when you're young, and all those things. It's just a dream of mine, and to kind of be sitting here, it's surreal, but it's everything that I expected to do, and I'm right where I said I'd be.
What do you want to show this week as far as your ability at the position?
Yeah, I mean, just an accurate passer, throws on time. We'll be throwing with different receivers, but I'll try to throw on time the best of my ability, and there's timing routes, accuracy, showing off arm strength. So I think there's multiple things, and I'll be testing, running the 40, doing the 5.10, jumping as well. So showing my mobility too.
What have the Panthers said about their quarterback situation and how you might fit in there?
Yeah, we didn't get in depth about their quarterback situation. Really, it was just me and going back to Pitt, my offense, being able to detail that, and just kind of learn. They're learning how I learn, I'd say. So hypothetically, if I was to go there, they'd have an idea of how to coach me when I first walk in that building.
Kenny, when you're talking about showing off mobility, do you care more about like a 40 time or a shuttle time, or just the way you throw the ball when it comes out when you're moving your feet?
I'd say both. Pocket footwork, and obviously showing a little bit of speed and mobility in the drills that I'll be going through.
Do you have a 40 time you're trying to hit?
I won't be breaking any records. I can get out and say that. So I don't know. We'll see where I end up.
With these questions about your hand size, are you curious to see what it measures, and how do you exactly try to widen it?
Really just the exercises that I was doing. The reason why I didn't measure at the Senior Bowl was just to have those extra couple weeks. Just kind of a common sense thing. It'll help you to have more time working the exercises. So whatever it measures, and I'm sure that won't be the end of it, but that'll be the last measurement I'm sure I'll take of it. Can you repeat that? Sorry. Yeah, I think it's, they're all just as important. I'd say this is more of a smaller sample size than, obviously your season's the number one, and what you put on tape is pretty much your resume. The interview process is huge, and then this is more of a smaller piece with Pro Day, but it's kind of, I'd say, the last, box you have to check in this whole process.
What are some of the exercises for hand size? Like, what were you doing?
I don't know what they're called. I'm not the doctor that does it. But just kind of, working, I guess, the stretch, I can't really explain it.
Kenny, your measurements tomorrow.
Yes.
And on that topic, you had the Thursday night game in the rain against Sam Howell and Tar Heels. You kind of tell people to look at that tape in terms of how you held up okay and implemented it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the big body of work is your tape throughout your career. So there's multiple games that people can go watch, and that's your resume. The tape's your resume, and all this other stuff is just the box that you have to check, I feel like, before the draft. So yeah.
But specifically that game is pretty horrible conditions.
Yeah, it wasn't a fun one, especially in overtime. Obviously, it got a lot worse. So yeah, that's a great example.
Kenny, you played a lot of ball
for 4 years. And are you now kind of seeing the challenge of the NFL? You're the face of a franchise as a quarterback. How do you embrace that as you get closer to this, the actual draft? And when you get drafted in the first round, there's this huge responsibility. Yeah,
and I've talking to guys that have played in the league and have been in that situation. It's really just coming down to being yourself. And throughout my career, I think that's something I've always just resorted back to being myself. Having my family close, my friends close, and put my best foot forward. So I feel like I just attack it the same.
Do you try not to get hung up on what spot you're picked? Like Compton or
Yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, you can't control it. It's a little different than the whole college process where you're recruiting, you go on visits, and then you choose. So this is a completely different process where, you kind of sit and wait, and you got to see where you end up going. And, I can promise it doesn't matter where I go, I'll be extremely excited. Like I said before, a dream of mine to play in the NFL, so hopefully that'll come true here soon.
Hey, you played a lot of ball, man. You played a lot of ball in your time. A lot of guys in the league have had to sit and wait a year. Have you thought about the mentality of you have to go in and have to sit behind a guy and wait?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go in and compete, and then, you know, however it shakes out, it shakes out. And, you know, I'll do my best to learn, whether that's on the field, off the field, learning from whoever's in there. Throughout my college career, I had, you know, as a freshman, I had to do that, and then got thrown in the fire there early, as a young kid, and had to go play. So, I mean, I know what it is like to do both and how to approach both mentalities.
During this draft process, have you stayed in contact with Coach Whip, and if so, what has he kind of meant to you?
Yeah, I talk to Coach Whip, you know, once every couple of weeks, I'd say, you know, keeping in touch with how he's doing in Nebraska. And obviously, he's, you know, keeping in touch with how I'm doing through this process. But a guy who did it on the other end, I'd say, as the coach, and, you know, going through the prospects that he went through and how he detailed it out, obviously he's been a huge help to me, knowing that he's been there, done that, and, you know, has some answers for every question I have.
After you leave here, what do you do until it's pro day?
Train. This lifestyle, it's you know, it's for me. It's something that I've grown up always doing. So, you know, training 6 days a week. It's just another week for me, coming with how I always was, you know, brought up, training through high school, training through college. So I'm really having fun doing it. And you know, I'll train for 2 weeks, then head back to Pitt a week early, throw with our receivers, get our pro script ready to go for the 21st.
How has Matt Rule changed since those Temple days, and what's the challenge? How's the challenge different from trying, if he'd gone to Temple, to turn around a program like that versus trying to turn around a program like he's got at Carolina right now?
Yeah, from the brief interview I had with him, I can tell you, I mean, he hasn't really changed a bit. He was the same guy that recruited me to Temple. So I think, you know, everyone believes that he's the guy to be the head coach there and turn things around. And, you know, I have all the trust in the world in him.
At what point did you feel like you could have an NFL career? Was there a moment, was there a year where you said, you know what, I think that's actually a reality?
I mean, I'll be honest, it's been my dream from day one, but I always said I was going to go do it. I always had the confidence that, you know, I would be here at this stage, you know, one way or another. Everyone's road is different. My road wasn't 3 years. I had to do the 5 years, you know, not 6 years. For a lot of people thought I'd been in college for 6, you know, only been in school for 5. So everyone's journey is different. I just knew I would end up in this seat right here. So I had to believe from day one.
What's the biggest thing schematically that you could take from Pitt that you think is going to help you now at this next level?
Yeah, just Coach Whipple's West Coast system. And, you know, now having a chance to go through some of these interviews, teams will install plays, right, erase it, they'll ask you questions, and they'll go back and tell you to draw it. I feel like I've had a pretty good recall with what they throw on the board because of what I've done in college. So I've really enjoyed kind of learning some new systems, some new concepts, but having the recall of Coach Whipple's offense has really helped me.
Did you interview with the Falcons, and how did that interview process go? What were they trying to get to know about you?
I did, yeah. You know, another great interview. Really just putting the film up there, me detailing the offense, and just learning my IQ. Good questions about how I like to learn. So, you know, like I said, hypothetically, if I was supposed to go there, they would know how to, you know, install plays and teach me early on. That kind of helps streamline the process. So it was, it's been a cool, you know, interview process. Like I said, learning new systems and going back and watching some film.
Kenny, was the interview different with the Steelers, considering they've watched you and they've seen you for the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, all the coaches say they've watched, you know, obviously a lot of tape on me and got to see me in person multiple times. So I think they just have kind of more of a hands-on visual look at me versus the film look. So I think, you know, a lot more teams will be watching, you know, a combine and pro day. You know, they will too, but they got to see me live.
Have you built any relationship with Mike Tomlin over the last couple of years?
I have. I mean, there's those benches when we call it the practice field, and he would always come over and hang out with us for a little bit in the summer. And you know, I remember as a freshman, the first time that happened, watching Antonio Brown and Ben out there, and he would come, you know, sit down and hang out. And I wouldn't leave the bench until he left, obviously. So, you know, been there for 5 years, so, you know, a long time I've known Coach, and it's been a pretty special relationship.
Kenny, you saw the Lions down in Mobile. What was it like to know that on staff at all?
Yeah, really enjoyed it. It was on the Jet staff, so I didn't get a chance to spend too much time with them, but they did on, I think it was a Thursday. We flipped staffs for an hour, had an hour interview slash like meeting with their staff, watching the practice film from the week. We'd go through it and kind of teach them the offense, and they would see how much we really understood it, so it was a cool experience.
Kenny, there were some reports earlier this offseason that some talent evaluators didn't believe there was starter-level talent in this quarterback class. Does that mean anything to you, and have you tried to change people's minds at all during this process as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, everyone's going to have their own opinion. I mean, I think there's great players in this class. You know, it is what it is. It's their opinion. I mean, who knows? We'll see down the road, you know, how it all shakes out.
Kenny, have you met with the Eagles and heard they have a mini in their interviews?
Yeah, I didn't make the Eagles while I was down here, but I wish I had a crack at that mini hoop. I heard Sam went 2 for 5. I got to tell him I think I can do a little better than that, 2 for 5, but we'll see.
Were there any other teams that had any interesting interview setups when you walked in, or any interesting questions or anything like that?
I wouldn't say any interesting setups. The weirdest question I think I had was it was like a survey question: would I rather be a cat or a dog? That was probably the strangest one. Besides that, I think it was pretty normal.
2 more questions.
What did you say? How'd you answer that?
Dog. I mean, I'm a dog guy, so I just kind of went with that.
Kenny, what's your plan for the draft day?
I don't know yet. That's a good question. I mean, it's been a long road. I've had a lot of supporters back home. I want to make sure my grandparents can be there and all my family members, so I'm still trying to figure out where I'll be for that.
Thanks, Kenny.
All right, folks. Well, that is Kenny Pickett's interview. And as always, thanks for watching the Locked On Pitt podcast. We'll be back tomorrow talking plenty of things from the combine, and we'll be talking about those measurements. We should be getting the quarterback measurements tomorrow, and that will obviously be a key part of this as well, and a key part of the puzzle. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Pitt women's basketball falling out of the ACC tournament. We'll talk about all of it coming up tomorrow on Locked On Pitt. Folks, as always, thanks for listening. And as always, hail to Pitt.